Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Good to see you today. It's been an interesting weekend. Anybody not get disturbed by the electric stuff yesterday? Anybody just sail through yesterday with no problems? We or It blinked a couple of times. Um, we went without electric from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and then it went off again at. Oh, I have it here, Jamie. I'm sorry. Then it went off again at around 6, and I think it was off till 9. So, it was just. I got to tell you a couple of stories, just because I'm guessing Sean's going to wander in here at some point because he's, constant in violation of one of our core values. And so I'll just pick on him, even though he's not here to defend himself. But we had an interesting. We had an interesting week in that you know that I have an issue with kids not wearing socks, right? You know that's one of the challenges that I face. Like I'll say, hey, where are your socks? Why aren't you wearing socks? And then I find socks stuffed in the cushions. Um, I think I've probably even found them in there were times I would pick Taryn up from the elementary school. You go to the high school to pick up Jess and Bryn, and what Taryn would literally take her shoes and socks off in the back seat while we were waiting, and it was frustrating. Well, there was one night this week where Taryn sometimes Brendan goes to bed without a whole lot of trouble, but there's sometimes that Taryn struggles with going to bed, and there's one more thing. Oh, I gotta do this, right? And so she comes down the hall the other night, and she decides that her feet are cold, probably from not wearing socks, and she needs to have a hot pack of some sort in her bed to get her feet warm, and yeah. So Taryn comes down and she gets a rice bag out of the closet or wherever it is that we keep these things, and she's put it into the microwave. Now Trace likes to go to bed early. She likes to go to bed, and I do my best to herd the cats toward at least towards their rooms. Like if I can get them into their bedrooms and doors shut, that's a victory for me. And so Taryn comes out. She gets the rice bag. She's beeping around with the microwave, and Trace comes flying down the hallway, and she is not happy. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen her not happy. Normally you would look at her and you say, "Hey, she sounds like an angel. It must be wonderful living with her." And as a general rule, it is. As a general rule, it is. But when the kids cross her, watch out, because she came down. What is all of this noise? What is this? And then this is the great thing, and is that she accused Taryn of stomping around. I believe it was like a herd of elephants. And then Taryn, who is being molded. She's been being molded in this ideal of perfectionism, right? Taryn says, "Mom, I was not stomping, I was skipping." So I don't know. I don't know what you have to do to get ready to bed, but in our household, we have a new standard in that sometimes we must skip. We must skip before we can go to bed. So anyway, so I did that. Now that I see that Sean's here, we can go ahead and get started. Steve, thanks for finding Sean. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So yeah, yeah. There's time you need to be somewhere, and So anyway, that's where we are. Let's go ahead. Let's jump into it. Core values. A big core value that we've been talking about is Jesus always valued people. Jesus always valued people. And at Cochrane Community Church, we have 8 core values. Somebody give me a couple of them. I heard prayer, Bible, service, I heard, community, relevancy, Stewardship. Outreach. And I know I heard worship. Worship. And we talked about in this group, we have a couple of core values of our own. One of them is timeliness, and the other is growth. There we are. There we are. So I want you to know I've been looking forward to this lesson for some time. This is a lesson that I know I've said it before that this might be my favorite law. This is absolutely one of my favorite laws, which puts it in the top 20 of the 21 leadership laws that we will be looking at over these 5 months or however long it is, 6 months that we're doing this. And it may be one of my favorites because of how I had I won't use the word pleasure because it was not a pleasureful way to learn this, but this is a law that has really stuck out to me based on just a couple of really key experiences that I've had in life. And there's just part of it. It stuck out because it was a life lesson that just kept being repeated to me, right? So let me talk to the men in the group first. Have you ever been corrected by your wife on the same thing more than once? Okay, so blink if this has happened. Right, I get sometimes we're like I'm not going to raise my hand, but I get that. Yeah, there's times that I have violated this law repeatedly, and I would like to think I'm a step further. Right, I know what the law is, and now I can at least make an effort to obey this law. And this is a law that plays such an important role in our leadership, no matter what leadership role we find ourselves in. Whether you're in charge of a giant company, whether you're just in charge of taking care of your kid, right, or a kid, not even your kid, right, anywhere in between. And what we're going to learn about today is we are going to learn about connection. That is what our topic for today is. And so we're going to unpack connection for a little bit, and then we're actually going to sit through a master class in connection by looking at a story of Jesus before we're all done today. So we've said many times before that a leader is anyone who at some times helps someone get somewhere or do something. And that involves getting them from where they are, somewhere like here, to a better place, right? We've used this example before. And there is a secret leadership sauce that helps you go from here to here. There's just a secret sauce that works. This is the sauce that connects the leader to the follower and helps them stick together through that journey, right? So we can probably all think of someone, we probably all have someone that if you close your eyes and just, if don't fall asleep, close your eyes and just think of someone who you say, I know that they're at a lower level and they can be at a higher level, and I'd just like to lead them to that place, right? To some of us, it might be a kid or a grandkid or a neighbor or an aunt or an uncle. You figure out where it is, but we probably have at least one person that comes to mind, right? And I'm going to tell you right now that it is this idea of connection that is going to help us be sticky through the journey to help lead that person from a lower place to a higher place. Now, just by show of hands, is this something that anybody in this room would like to get better at? Would you like to? Oh, very good. Barb has it said, I can see, so we'll just let her teach, I guess. I'm picking on you, Barb. Happy anniversary, by the way. What was it, 10 years? Is that what? Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Well done. So keep after it. Keep after it. So, let's get in and let's look at the law of connection. Now, the law of connection has a very simple definition. And it says the law of connection says that a leader touches a heart before asking for a hand. A leader touches a heart before asking for a hand. And this is such a key thing that I want to put. It's always the leader's job to connect. Leader's job is to connect, right? So, you see, some leaders erroneously believe it's the follower's job to connect with them. You know, we have somebody down here, we want to help them get up here, and we think that this person down here is just going to automatically know that, hey, I need to figure out how I can connect with this person. And it just doesn't work that way. We see this law of connection violated all the time, and we see it violated all the time politically, right? I think that's the easiest. I mean, if you want, I can make this blanket statement. Any law that we've looked at, all we have to do is look to our political system to see these laws violated every day. We see them violated every day. We see the alienation of different people, different groups of people, and it doesn't matter what political persuasion you are. This happens all the way. That's just the way. That's just the way that it goes. You have people that are always being disconnected, and so we want to really look at this idea on how we can become connected. And I would tell you that I have violated this law more times than I think I can count. And I want to tell you a story, if I could, because I think many of you have probably heard parts of this story. I don't know, and maybe I've told more of this, but as a pharmacist, I was given a challenge to get pharmacists trained to give flu shots. Now, you may have heard that part of the story, but if you were to go back 20 years, you could not go by a pharmacy anywhere nearby and it would say, come in, get a flu shot anytime. You know, that just wasn't the way that it was. Now, there were times, and these were just insane times, when we would host flu clinics and like everybody in the town would show up and it would just be bonkers. There'd be people wrapped around the store. It was just a wild time. But it was in the summer of 2005 when I was working at the pharmacy in Franklin, and I got the call that, hey Jess, you need to get some pharmacists trained to give flu shots. And I thought, what? Like that's not what we do. That's not what I went to school for. I don't know that I even wanted to give a flu shot myself, much less get people trained for it. But that first year, there were 13 of us that got trained. And then just added commentary on government. The state of Pennsylvania couldn't get their act together, so pharmacists couldn't even give flu shots in 2005. So I got 13 people trained. Then I had to say, sorry, we can't do it this year. And then in 2006, I was told you need to get pharmacists trained again. And that second year, I think I ended up with maybe about 25 people. So there's like a total of 25 of us. We were finally able to get started. But if you fast forward a few years, by 2012, the group that I was with, we had trained more than 12,000 pharmacists to give flu shots, and it was really a neat thing. Now, in this version of my story, I want to make sure that it's clear that this wasn't me training 12,000 people. I was just part of a group, and there were other members of my team that had similar stories to this to get to 12,000 pharmacists. But we all had to start from somewhere, and that somewhere that we started from was zero. We all had to start from zero. And I'm going to tell you that it wasn't easy. And when you go out and you ask a group of pharmacists and you say, hey, would any of you be interested in stabbing any of your patients? Which was essentially the way that that was as sophisticated as I was in 2005. Hey, would any of you like to go stab somebody? Right? You know, I thought that I was using charm at the time. but that probably wasn't the best choice of words. But there's a few people that come forward, and so my son is taking statistics, and so I'm going to do a little bit of a statistics lesson here for you today. This is something that is called a bell curve. All right. Now, within a bell curve, and you offer something out, when you offer something to a large group, there is different groups that stand out in it. So you have essentially 5 groups, and this is ultimately where I'm going to say the good, right? This is where we want to go, and this is the bad. This is what's holding us back. And so when different things become available, there's a group of people that are so excited about it. You have this first group, which is called the innovators. Right? These are the people that they just can't wait to take advantage of a new opportunity. So when you give out the invitation, you say, hey, this is where you are, this is where I'm going. There's a group of people that are like, yes, I'm there. They're on board. They're easy, right? They're easy. Now, there's a group after that, and this second group is called the early adopters. Right now, I heard this explained one time through the use through the illustration of when cell phones became available. Right, when cell phones first became available, some of you knew a lot of folks that had cell phones before you did, and perhaps some of you, as soon as they became available, you're like, oh my goodness, I need to have a cell phone. Right, there's some of us that were that way. So we have the first group, which is the innovators. The next group, which is the early adopters. We then have the early majority. They're followed by the late majority. These are the people that look around and they say, it seems like everybody else is doing this, I better do it too. And then you end up with a group of people who I believe are technically referred to as the laggards. Now that's a technical term. I used other less flattering terms than that. And let me refer to my notes because I did not always use friendly language like laggards. I used expressions like, these are the people who don't want to help people. That's what I used to describe some of my pharmacists. I also used the term threats to our profession. I thought that was a consider. And if I really got fired up, I would use a word like troll. I was like, we have some trolls out there that are really just holding us back, right? But I can tell you now that as we went through this, so, we throw this opportunity out. I throw this opportunity out in Western Pennsylvania. Does anybody want to go out and give a flu shot to their patients? I had 12, right? There was me and 12 others. We were the innovators. Now, I had to be an innovator because that was my job, right? I was supposed to do that. But then as we started to move, we came here, and then we moved through this. And so from 2005, this took to 2012, right? Maybe I should have drawn that backwards. It may have made more sense. But I would tell you that I didn't learn this law till probably about 2017. I'm going to say I probably did not learn this principle until 2017. And as I've learned this principle, I can look back and I would say I did not lead these folks very well through this exercise, right? Now, I want to just make sure to reiterate this. I know some of you in here are note takers. And so I want to encourage you, if you have never taken this note, and I don't know how you couldn't have taken this note yet, but I want to encourage you, if you have never written this down before, write it down today. Everyone deserves to be led well. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that everyone deserves to be led well. And you see, we try to tell people that they would just be trained. Hey, we want to go when we want to do this stuff. Yet people in this whole spectrum, they had concerns. They had objections. They were not quite comfortable with some things. And essentially the big thing that they lacked was they lacked security. Who here likes security, right? I think that's something that we all would just really love to just be secure, right? That's one of those things which I would suggest that's one of the most valuable emotions that we have out there, and it's one of the most valuable conditions for our hearts, right? Is to be secure, to be secure in our relationships and in our finances and all those things. Those are things that we really would look forward to. So, has anybody here ever felt insecure? I'd say we probably all have felt insecure at one time or another. I'm sure it's not just me. So as we started to do this, it wasn't just sending out an email saying, hey, why don't you come and get started and do this. We had to go and talk to a lot of folks, and a lot of times we went through that. It was all about us telling them what they should feel, what they should do, and it really we struggled. And I'll tell you, we had some of these folks who were in this category that were very, very hesitant, and I can think of a couple examples because the pharmacist in question had Parkinson's. And for any of you that know what Parkinson's is, they have a tremor. And so I just want to put you on the other side of that needle. Can you imagine somebody with a tremor coming at you? That seems like it would. That seems like it could be a bit of a challenge, and there's obviously a lot of emotion that was caught up in that, and so we needed to be able to connect with people on an emotional level. And the big thing that I want to make sure that you remember with this law is that it's always our job as leaders to connect. And I put that on the other side of the board, but I have it in my notes here twice. It's always our job to connect. Successful leaders are initiators. We are going to start things, right? We will take the first steps with others and then make the effort to continue to build the relationship. So if you want somebody on your side, it's not just about convincing them, right? It's not just saying, hey, this is really good for business. The idea is that you need to connect with the people that you are leading. When you think about the life of Jesus, how many times do we see Jesus out there trying to convince people? I am hard-pressed to come up with many examples of Jesus just trying to convince people. And I think Paul did a little bit of convincing. I think Paul was very methodical in how he laid out some of that stuff. But I think when it comes to Jesus, what we see is here is a man that always would practice the law of connection. He would connect with people, and people responded, right? How do you get 4,000 people to show up? You connect with them, right? You got to connect with them. He connected with people everywhere. So I want to give you, I've got a list here, I don't know, 7 or 8 items on the list here on how you can connect. Is anybody interested in being a better connector? I got a couple people that want to be a better connector. All right, so let's get a couple ideas on here on how we can become a better connector. Number one, we have to connect. When we talk about leadership, leadership always starts where? With you. Always starts with yourself. So we need to connect with yourself, right? First thing we want to do is connect with yourself. You must know who you are if you desire to connect with anybody else. You need to know what you are, who you are, to be able to connect with anybody else. The note that I have here is that people do not heed the call of an uncertain trumpet. Right? If you think about that, if you don't really know who you are, you're not going to be able to connect with anybody and get them to go with you anywhere. So we need to be confident with ourselves. And if you do not believe in who you are or where you want to lead, you should not be surprised if nobody else wants to follow you. Right? You need to be connected with yourself. Number 2, we need to communicate with openness and sincerity. And I'll give that just a different word. be authentic, right? People can tell when you're authentic, right? It's that's such a that's such a key thing for us. It's authenticity in the leaders is what allows us to connect. Now, at this point, we need to know who we are. We need to be authentic. And then we also need to know, number three, we need to know our audience. We need to know who we are trying to connect with. Your audience. I can't spell and talk at the same time. We need to know our audience. You want to speak to what your audience cares about, right? When Jesus was teaching, he would often teach in parables. He would often teach about reaping and sowing. He would talk about the vineyards. He would talk about these different things. And why was that? Because it was largely an agricultural society, right? He talked with what made sense with them. If he was talking to a group of bankers, he would talk in a different way, right? You know, that's what we need to understand. And as a leader, we need to know our audience, so we need to talk to them in the terms that they will connect with. Number 4, we need to live our message. Live your message. Now, I am here, and I've been teaching you guys leadership for whatever it is, 10 weeks now, something like that. Oh, it's long. It's been longer than that, but where I've really been more explicit in it has been probably about the last 10 weeks. I am not here telling you how to eat a healthy diet, right? You guys, I've been authentic about my diet. If you want me to be more authentic about my diet, let me time out. Let me give you a little. Let me just tell you this is why you do not take dieting advice from me. Because the grocery store had an awesome deal on fudge stripe cookies. Now, does anybody not like fudge stripe cookies? You know what I'm talking about? Like, it was glorious. And I had a little bit of time on my hands. Brendan was at Girl Scouts. Like, this, full transparency. Full transparency. We're selling Girl Scout cookies in my household. I've got not one but 2 Girl Scouts, and I find myself on Wednesday night at the grocery store. At the grocery store, they're basically giving me fudge stripe cookies. So how could I say no? It really, I think, I don't have all the biblical laws committed to memory by any means, but I think there's one that says, if thou is offered cookies, thou should take them. Like, I think there should be some, I haven't, it may not be in there. So I bought not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 packages of cookies. I referred to it as a bag of cookies. I have since been corrected by my daughter. It is not a bag. It is a package of cookies. And I ate 3/4 of that first package on the way home. Oh, well, okay. So, yeah, okay. So I'm being it is so I recognize that I hope I have some level of respect with you, right? Wherever that is. But I realize that whenever I share these stories with you, chances are like it drops, like it goes down. So I was getting these I got these cookies at Tops, which is the downtown mall in Meadville. I had to go pick up Brendan at Girl Scouts, which is at the Diamond in Meadville. From downtown mall to the Diamond, 3/4 of a package of cookies, gone, demolished. Like, Brendan said, well, are there any left? You know, I'm like, well, I said, if you hurry, you know. When Brendan got in the car, I felt just the slightest bit of, like, I should have made Brendan, if I would have made her drive, I just would have probably eaten the rest, but I drove her home. But anyway, that is where it was. I'm sorry, that was a side story that probably didn't help you as much as it helped me, but it's about being authentic and living the message. I'm not up here telling you that, you know, hey, I'm the model of health. I am not. I am the model of how to fall prey to cookies. Really good at that, right? What I'm up here to promote to you is you all are leaders, and you can all be better leaders whenever you know the law and whenever you obey the law. Right? One of the things that you have to do is you have to live your message, right? So I am being authentic with you on the struggles that I have in real life with eating fudge stripe cookies. Please, nobody bring me fudge stripe cookies. I know you love me and care for me, but please, 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 because I will not be able to eat them between here and home, right? That's just the limitation that I have there. So we need to live our message. And just a variation of that is practice what you preach, right? Your credibility comes from living your message. Now, if we want to connect, and this is key, this is absolutely what Jesus does. You go to your people. As a leader, you go to them. You do not wait for them to come to you, right? Go where they are. Speak their language. Be attuned to their culture, their background, their interests, their education. The leader must adapt to the follower. The follower does not adapt to the leader to connect, right? The note I put in here is that you cannot steer a parked car, right? You can find somebody and they could be going in a direction that you think that they should not be going in, and you want to lead them from the direction they're going to a better place, right? But you've got to go to them, and you got to get with them, and you got to help them turn around to be able to see that other place, right? That's the way that it works, right? Number 6. As a leader, we must focus on your followers. Do not focus on yourself. Focus on your followers. The fastest way to connect with people is when you focus on them, right? Number 7, believe in them. And I'm going to tell you, there's going to be times when you're going to try to lead somebody from where they are to that better place, and they're not going to believe that they can go from here to here. They're not going to believe it. They're going to say, you know what, I would like to go to this better place, but I don't know that I can get there. And there's times when, as a leader, you have to loan them some of that belief, right? You've got to give them that encouragement. You may have to give them a loan of that belief to get to where they are. You need to believe in your followers before sometimes they will be able to believe in themselves. The last thing that I have here to be able to connect, number 8, is to offer direction and hope. Offer direction and hope. People expect leaders to help them get to where they want to go, but good leaders do more than that. Good leaders deal in hope. When you give people hope, you give people a future. How many hopeless people have you encountered? There's a lot of people out there that struggle. There's a lot of people that struggle an awful lot because they do not have hope. And as leaders, that's one of the things that we need to be able to share with people. I'm reasonably sure I've shared this story with you before, but maybe you weren't here or maybe you weren't paying attention whenever I've shared that story before. But I know this guy, and this guy has a stepdaughter, and he expects that his stepdaughter is just going to magically tune in to what he wants her to do. Right? So this is where they are, and where he wants to get people to is this smooth, well-running household, Like, who doesn't want a smooth, well-running household? Like, we all want it, right? Even when we get rid of the kids, I'm guessing that we still want that. There's probably a time when we blame the kids for the lack of smoothness, but there's where we are. And he has his household here, and he wants his household here, and he decides that he's going to wait for his stepdaughter to get smart enough to listen to what he's going to tell her. That's his grand plan. And that continues to be his struggle. Sean and Barb celebrated 10 years. He has been more than 10 years in this struggle. It is not working for him. It is not working for him. He says, maybe when this kid gets smart enough, she'll get on my page. Here's a question to consider. What if they never do? What if she never gets smart enough to get on the same page with him? Isn't that a terrible place to be? Isn't that a terrible environment to continue to put yourself? What if you have a dumb kid? I mean, let's be honest. Most of us have kids and they're dumb. I mean, they do dumb things. They're microwaving rice packs in the middle of the night, and they're skipping. I mean, come on. Come on. What if you have a dumb kid? You can't wait for them to get smart. You got to connect with them. And this is the simplest, right? I've had the privilege of speaking to the youth at Camp for Kids for the last several years. Now, I don't know that they would say that's a privilege. I usually just go in and yell at them in the morning to try to wake them up. But I've had this privilege for some time. And earlier this year, I was invited to talk to the youth at youth group on a Sunday night. So now it's like formal. And I say to myself, oh my goodness, I am scared to death to talk to these kids. I am scared to death. And I was talking with our former youth pastor, Mark Stevenson, and he said, there's no difference between kids and adults. The only difference is that adults have the problems adults have the same problems as kids do. They just haven't taken care of them. Right, they just haven't taken care of them for longer, right? And I thought, oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I still was nervous to talk to the kids, but we need to recognize that we may deal with people that need a little bit of help. They need a little bit of help to get from here to here. And what do we need to do? We need to connect. Connection is the secret sauce. Now, I would tell you this. I can recall a time when we only had 2 kids in the household. We had Jess and we had Bryn, which means that Jess was probably around 5. I'm going to guess that Bryn was probably about 2, and the house was not running smoothly. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the grand solution that I had is if I sat at the dining room table and cried, maybe these 2, close your ears, son. Maybe these 2 challenged children would somehow see their old man crying and have pity on him and change their way. Like that was my desperation. This would have been 2008. Didn't know the law. I was traveling a lot. Things weren't going well. Now, I would suggest that if you see Jess or if you see Bryn today, you might say, these seem to be reasonably sharp kids. 2008, they were not. They were not. I'm sitting there at the table, crying, and they look at me like I'm some type of weirdo. And I was. Like that, I was, right? I was not being an effective leader. I was not. It's because I was not being authentic, right? I thought maybe if I just cried in front of them, I could manipulate them. They saw right through that. They're like, no, Dad, that's not. Dad, all you want to do is go watch the game, which as an aside, this afternoon, that is all I want to do. See what nonsense I get to deal with this afternoon. Not all places where we need to lead people from and to are the same, right? Some of them are going to be easier to get people from here to here. Some of them are going to be, some of it's going to be a little more difficult. Sometimes it's a slower, gradual. Sometimes it's short and steep, right? We've got these different ways of looking at it. And what I need you to understand, this is a note to take if you are a note taker. The tougher the challenge, the greater the need for connection. The tougher the challenge, the greater the need for connection. And one of the things that, and I'm not really good at this, I'm getting better at it, but I'm not really good at this. One of the best ways to connect with people is to be, and the advice I was given was to walk slowly through the room. Used to be whenever church was done on a Sunday morning, I would be the first one out the door. I actually thought there was a prize. I've never found the prize for being the first one out the door, and I can tell you that I have been the first one out the door on more than one occasion. I now try to be, well, I try to be at least towards the end. I haven't been the last one out the door, but you hang around. You have the opportunity to talk with people, to connect with people. You have that if you put yourself in the environment, right? So just something to keep in mind. Greet people by name. This is really when we did that study of all the different relationship rules, all the different biblical relationship principles that we looked at really just feed this law, right? When we look at those things, it really helps us do that. But just some other things to keep in mind, greet people by name, be happy to see people, right? Find out what people are doing and how they're doing. Most importantly, listen to people. Men, let me give you a cheat code for life. When your wife says something to you, repeat it back. Repeat it back. I'm not good at this. I know to do it. I don't always do it. But whenever I'm told, hey, this is what you need to do, if I repeat it back, there's a greater chance I might remember it. It's not a guarantee, but there's a greater chance. And whenever you do that, what you communicate to the other person is I heard you. What a great way to demonstrate how you value somebody than to say that you are heard. Whenever people have to say the same thing more than once, it's because they didn't think you heard them the first time. They didn't think you paid attention to them. So repeat it back. Cheat code for, and you can use that anywhere. You don't have to just use that at home. Use it at work. Hey, I think we're running low on coffee in the break room. You just say, we're running low on coffee in the break room? They're like, oh, he gets me. I don't drink coffee, right? But when you repeat it back, it's like, oh my goodness, this person gets me. It's a great way to connect. Don't underestimate the importance of building relational bridges between you and the people you lead. So when it comes to leading yourself, this goes back to a lesson that we looked at last year. It's about being intentional. You must be intentional about leading yourself. But if you want to lead others, you're going to have to lead them by connecting with them. You can say this is where we're going to go, but the better the connection, the better we're going to have as far as being able to achieve that goal in a timely manner. Now, I had threatened you a while ago that we are going to look at a master class from the greatest leader of all time. And so we're going to look at this story of Jesus. It's in the Gospel of John chapter 4. Jesus and the woman at the well. John chapter 4, verses 1 through 26. So let's go through this quickly. I know we're getting low on time here. Story reads, Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now, he had to go through Samaria. There's a whole separate lesson on that. We're not going to get into it today. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. Pay close attention. First thing that happens. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" Important lesson on connection right here. Jesus initiates the contact. Jesus spoke first. He did not isolate himself. So there's part of this where he's going through Samaria, and by and large, Jews looked down their nose at the Samaritans, right? There was this huge racial divide that existed there. But Jesus did not isolate himself from people who other Jews would view as undesirable. Now, when he says what he says to her is he says, "Will you give me a drink?" And his disciples had all gone into town to buy food. Now, imagine this. Jesus is sitting at a well, and a woman comes up, and you know what he says to her? "Hey, let's talk about water." He talks about what's right there. He talks about what's obvious. He establishes common ground on a very particular topic of interest, which is water. You're hanging out at a well, you're going to talk about water. Verse 9. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus listened to the woman. I'd hazard a guess that Jesus asks her for a drink of water, and she probably looks around like, who me? Like, are you sure you're talking to me? Like, Jews don't associate with us, right? And Jesus listens to her. And then listen to his response, verses 10 through 15. Jesus answers her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." Wow. Notice the woman's response. "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." To connect, Jesus arouses her interest. He built a verbal bridge to make her thirsty for something more than physical water. Start at verse 16. He told her, "Go call your husband and come back." She says, "I have no husband." Jesus says to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is quite true." Verse 19, the woman says, "Sir, I can see you are a prophet." Wow. And what you do not see here is Jesus passing any type of judgment. I was trying to train pharmacists, and I was calling them trolls. I was passing judgment. Right? This is my admission of my violation of this law. Right? We see this. Leaders can only take people as far as they are ready to go. Jesus knew he shouldn't go too far, but he lets this woman know that he knows an awful lot about her, and he does not pass judgment on her. Now, there's some of us that do. Right? Some of us we see this and we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass judgment on people. But the phrase that somebody gave me a long time ago that I think may be helpful for you here is that there's sometimes 3/4 of an answer is better than an answer and a half. Sometimes given just enough to keep them engaged is what you need to do, as opposed to keep them engaged, pass judgment, and bury them. That's not what Jesus did. He kept the woman engaged. He accepts her right where he's at. He knew her lifestyle, but he never condemned her for it. Remember, Jesus values people. Always values people, right? He loves them right where they are, and that is the challenge that we need to have for the people that we lead. We need to love them right where they are, warts and all. Trolls have warts, is my understanding, right? You got to love them where they are. Jesus had no condition for loving his people. He didn't say, well, when you get smart enough, when you give up this particular lifestyle, when you become spiritual enough, then I'll love you. No, no, no. He says, love you right where you're at. I'll lead you from where you're from. That's the way he handles it. Love people where they are. Verse 20, the woman continues, our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the only place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Jesus replies, woman, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. And they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. Leaders stick with the key issues. There's oftentimes distractions can come up. He did not get distracted. He kept the woman focused on what was important. He did not devote his focus from the real issue. Verses 25 and 26. The woman said, I know that Messiah. I know that the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Leaders communicate directly and simply. Jesus revealed his identity in clear and simple terms. When we connect with people, the people that you're trying to connect with will be more willing to take action when you take the first move and you include emotion. And so, I'm sure I've taught this before, but the E in email stands for anybody? The E in email stands for electronic, right? The E in emotion stands for energy. The E in emotion stands for energy. Emotion is the energy we give to put people in motion. That's what emotion is. And so we need to make the first move with emotion to help people move. Now, when you give first, then people are more likely to return, right? The note I have here says giving starts the receiving process. We need to give first, and then we'll get back. We'll give first, then we'll give back. Those of us that have wood burners or have had wood burners in our house, if you want to get heat out of it, you know what you have to do? You have to give it wood first to get wood out or to get heat out of it. You always have to give to receive, give to receive, give to receive. If you want to be able to get an apple off an apple tree, you know what you have to first do? You have to put a seed in the ground. You got to give to receive, give to receive. So when we're leading people, we need to give to receive. We need to give emotion to get them to move so we can receive that and move forward. Now, when you connect with individuals, you're able to gain the attention of crowds. So, and to me, this just echoes the idea of sowing and reaping, right? You plant a few seeds, and it gives a much more bountiful crop, right? It grows just exponentially. This may work better visually, but if you had two people standing next to one another, when you reach out to them, what happens is the distance between you is automatically shrunk. The distance is automatically shrunk whenever you reach out to them. So I hope that maybe you can see why this is maybe one of my favorite laws. But I want to do something a little differently today. I have given you, and then this is just so I can buy some time to erase the board. But I give you this framework, ACT, right? Every week I've been saying, hey, based on what you've learned today, what action can you take? What change will you make? And is there something that you can teach to somebody else for your sake and for theirs? What I want to challenge you to do is, was there something that you got today that really sticks out to you? Take just a moment. What was there something that stuck out to you today? I want you to turn to the person next to you and just say, "This is what stuck out most to me." I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice the T here, right? Share something that stuck out to you today with your neighbor here, if you would, please.